So in response to this whole Cabba versus Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta thing that came and went, I wanted to have this conversation about God Ki and essentially where it ended up going in the Dragon Ball Super anime. We know where it ended up with the manga. We'll explain that later on in the video, but for right now, let's just focus on the anime. So a lot of people are under the impression that Goku never underwent that whole transition of absorbing God Ki into his base form, and what they believe is that Goku instead had his regular Ki grow to godlike levels, which is not true. Kick it back to Dragon Ball Super and we see the whole explanation about what happened to Goku after he loses the God Aura and essentially goes back into Super Saiyan 1. When Goku explains that he doesn't feel weaker by any stretch of the imagination, Beerus has to elaborate on the fact that his Super Saiyan God Aura did not disappear, but instead the power fused with his very being. So what does that mean? What does that actually end up getting to? How does this translate? Well, it's pretty simple. When you look at the word power and what it typically represents in the Dragon Ball verse, regardless of anime, manga, games, anything of the sort, power always ties back to Ki. Even when you see Gohan explain Ki to Videl in both the anime and manga, Gohan makes it clear that Ki is the latent power in the body. So now let's do a little bit of substitution with the statement from Beerus. It seems the Super Saiyan God's Ki did not disappear even though time ran out. Rather, the Ki fused with your very being. So again, no, this statement is definitely in reference to the divine energy that Goku achieves upon becoming a Super Saiyan God. So why does Beerus say things like, well, Goku made the power his own? Because Goku now has the ability to tap into that power on his own and then produce more of it as time goes on. But obviously I'm going to hear people tell me, well, why is Goku still able to be sensed in Super Saiyan if he's maintained the God Ki in his base form? It's because Goku in this state is not fully tapped into his divinity. And while yes, I know they're different continuities, this is the exact reason why Goku has the ability to use Ultra Instinct in his base in Super Saiyan forms, because Goku can access that divine energy in his base form. And just like how Super Saiyan God later on down the line in the series happens to become stronger than what Goku would do if he wishes to simply like use a small amount of God Ki and then move that in tandem with Super Saiyan, is because of the fact of how he's fully tapped into his divinity, and then he can move off of that with more multipliers. So as of right now, I'm gonna hold off on this and kind of pick up where I left off when we start to talk about examples of Saiyan Beyond God being used in the actual anime itself. However, I'm gonna talk about Resurrection F because a lot of people seem to have those events misconstrued as well. First and foremost, right, I need people to understand like very thoroughly. I already explained why, Vegeta and Goku can be sensed even though they're using God Ki in their base and Super Saiyan forms. It's because they're not fully tapped into their divinity. Understand that this is heavily indicated by two things, right? The first of which being that Whis is now able to be sensed by Vegeta and Goku. And see, people love to use the episode where Goku and Vegeta were learning how to control God Ki as a means to debunk the idea of them having it, which doesn't make any sense because Vegeta was taught how to tap into God Ki. He was never taught how to control it until Goku became his training partner. Goku wasn't taught anything. He could not tap into his God Ki consciously. Everything that was happening in Resurrection F after the God power quote unquote ran out and he went back into regular Super Saiyan form, it was happening unconsciously. Goku didn't even realize what was happening. He did not know. So yeah, in Resurrection F, that's why we get it explained that essentially these two characters have learned and grown so much and expanded into this random realm of godlike power. Now, when it comes down to examples of this actually being put into use, this is pretty much made clear whenever Goku decides to fight Zamasu in the Goku Black arc. Not Goku Black, even though that's going to be an example later on down the line. I'm talking about in his fight with Zamasu when he went with Whis and Beerus to go investigate the whole conspiracy around Gowasu being killed. It's in that fight where Goku ends up powering up to a Super Saiyan 2, and you can tell that he's using God Ki because Gowasu actually ends up making the statement saying that his power rivals a god of destruction. However, when Goku fights people like future Trunks, no such statement is ever made, and actually as a matter of fact, Trunks is shown to be able to match that level of power, and still no such statement is ever even made about Trunks. Even in that fight with Trunks, Trunks is making it clear that Goku in Super Saiyan 3 would still get clapped up by base Goku Black, and Super Saiyan 2 Goku is proven to be more than enough for that Goku Black, and even stronger one after that because he powers up in that fight, I think twice at least. So again, we know that when Goku is battling familiars, right, and trying to test people of the past and their strength, obviously he's going to dial back his power and he won't use God Ki because that's not the point of development that he expects Trunks to be at in that fight. Because honestly, the first thing that popped up on Goku's mind when he saw Trunks again was Boo and Deborah and everything like that. Like, Goku wasn't even concerned with the gods and things of that nature. He was concerned with the next sequential threat that Trunks was going to have to inevitably end up facing, which pretty much explains why Goku is dialing back his power by not using God Ki in the fight with Trunks, but in the fight with Zamasu, where he's actually testing his own limits on top of testing his opponents. Now, when it comes to Vegeta versus Cabba, right, this is where the discrepancy ends up showing up the most, because people genuinely miss out on key context clues, or they either just like they do that or they just change the context in general. Like, people forget the whole point of Vegeta fighting Cabba and like dragging the battle out for so long was to essentially train Cabba and boost him. He saw Cabba's potential and he knew where he could end up being if he put his mind to it, and he didn't have any resources, so Vegeta had to become that resource. Again, Vegeta is teaching Cabba about base regular Saiyan strength and the Super Saiyan transformation. He does not teach him anything about the gods until Super Saiyan Blue, where he elbows him in his sternum. Well, that's the manga, where he literally runs up and just hits him in his gut, like knocks him clean out, does him dirty, does him foul, okay? It isn't until then when God Ki is introduced, right? So again, I say, why are we mentioning that whole statement of him and Vegeta being like equally matched? Because A, that could be just a blatant lie, which is like most likely, because not only is Vegeta saying this out loud contrary to popular belief, I don't know why I had to explain that, but Vegeta saying that out loud, but it's further backed up by, again, Vegeta saying things he does not mean as a means to boost Cabba later on, where he threatens Planet Sadala's existence to get Cabba to turn into a Super Saiyan. Like, there are just so many statements indicating that this entire fight was a lesson constructed by Vegeta to boost up his fellow Saiyan. And you know what? That doesn't even debunk the whole idea of them being equally matched. This will though. They can still be equally matched when Vegeta isn't using God Ki. Remember, this fight is not about divinity until Blue comes into play. It's all about regular Saiyan existence. So why would Vegeta be using God Ki here? Secondly, right, I want people to understand this. If he's not using God Ki, he'll be fine. It'd be perfectly okay with Cabba being equal to him. So yeah, again, that can be like what Cabba's relative to, like that same Vegeta that hasn't usurped or eclipsed Kid Buu in power without God Ki or things of that nature. That's perfectly fine. But that doesn't effectively scale anywhere besides like unquantifiably above that same Vegeta. Like, you could, okay, I wouldn't say unquantifiably, because narratively, like, there's still like massive amps and just regular base levels of strength just from like the fight with Kid Buu all the way to like even before Beerus touches down on Earth. Like, there's a giant growth there to be shown. So I'm not gonna like hold that too heavy on the head, but all in all, I'm simply saying that Cabba would not be relative to any kind of God Ki enhanced Saiyan. He would simply be fodder to any kind of God Ki enhanced Saiyan. If Goku with his God Ki were to fight Cabba, he'd murder him. Same thing with Vegeta. It just goes like that. Again, they can be equally matched with Vegeta having no God Ki, that's fine. But when it comes to them actually putting, you know, their divine energy into use, it's not going to work for Cabba. Now, let's get into the last part of the video where I wanted to break down how Saiyan Beyond God worked in the manga, right? How does that apply in the manga? How does that apply in Akira Toriyama and Toyotaro's joint collaboration work? This is where things start to get a little tricky, because if you pay attention to the manga, in chapter 3 of Dragon Ball Super, it's explained that if you want to see Bulma's party in full, go watch the Battle of Gods movie, which implies the missing events in the Battle of Gods arc in the manga is simply covered and basically non-streamlined in the movie, which again, it's kind of confusing because they also decided to make their own creative tweaks to events that did happen in the movie. Like, again, Bulma's birthday party happening in 2 different locations in both the movie and the anime. In the movie, it happens in her backyard. In the anime, it happens on a cruise ship. So like, you know, in the manga, it happens on a cruise ship as well. So that's kind of confusing, but like, it's a tweak that's kind of done to fit the manga, but everything else from the movie can fit into the manga as well. I'm doing a lot of reaching, but I feel like that's most likely here. And it's there in the movie where we get multiple explanations on top of the one that we have from Beerus, but the one I want to focus on the most is the explanation we get in the Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F art book, which quite literally explains that Goku and Vegeta, these Saiyans, can gain godlike power and control it, right? And this would essentially make them godlike Saiyans. So Toriyama himself already explains that Saiyan beyond God is something that exists in this manga and movie like amalgamation, if that makes sense. So pretty much just take everything I said about, you know, Saiyan beyond God in the anime and just apply it to the manga, because it pretty much functions and applies the exact same way. And like I mentioned before, Goku's ability to use Ultra Instinct in his, like, you know, base and Super Saiyan forms is kind of an extension or a subset of his ability to tap into divine energy in his base forms. It's a subset of Saiyan beyond God, if that makes any kind of sense. So yeah, with that being said, I thought that would be, you know, like the definitive case closed on Saiyan beyond God. I thought it would kind of make things a little bit more easy to understand, because the more people start to deviate from this way of thinking, the more people start to kind of come up with their own random assumptions that don't really have any kind of legs to stand on. For example, Goku randomly just growing to the level of the gods in his regular key state. It just doesn't make any sense, and it's never alluded to, unless like the English dub of Super says that, but that's like notoriously bad and like notoriously changes lines that don't need to be changed and confuses the audience so much. Like, if you want to go off the English dub, then fucking Goku can force his way into the future. Like, it just doesn't make any sense half the time, because like the sub never says that. But yeah, it's been your boy Historic. You know, I've had a pleasure entertaining you, and with that being said, I'm out. Be good people. Peace.